reimagining Galesburg in a different light than what we've been doing the last probably 50 years at least. We don't have a whole lot of preconceived ideas. We do have a few things that I'm going to throw out to help us discuss where we might want to go, but anybody that has any ideas, things that you'd like to see happen in Galesburg, things that we need to see happen, we're set up with a microphone. If you'd like to come up and talk, there'll be plenty of time for that. So let me explain just a little bit where many paths started and how we came into being. I had left Galesburg after being here for 30 years and not the most conservative people in town. But Tom Martin was very receptive and was very nice and agreed to have us write a column 2 times per month. And that's kind of where we stand up to this point of reimagining Galesburg as a place where that happens frequently and regularly and is inclusive and promotes equality for everyone. And that's pretty much many paths. We, through our 6 months and our 6 podcasts, we did open up some avenues, we call them pathways, that we thought would be worthwhile to explore, that people have suggested, hey, we should continue to explore this. The first notion was one of developing our downtown, bringing our downtown basically back to life. I think if you've seen pictures of the 1930s, 1940s, you've seen a lively, exciting looking downtown area. Since that time, we haven't had quite so much luck, but we are able to report, and we will talk about tonight, that changing. We have a strong notion that our downtown is going to begin to rejuvenate itself. Along with that, we talk about neighborhoods branching out kind of from the downtown. The downtown always was the center of activity. Neighborhoods branching out from the downtown that are active once again. Perhaps that even get some businesses to locate in the neighborhoods. When we talk about a new type of economic development and bringing them back to life, making it so that people want to keep up their properties, making it worthwhile for them to keep up their properties, that we can perhaps change the direction of our properties going down in value versus going up in value. And then in the neighborhoods, and as it works out, Galesburg has a pretty good park system. In the neighborhoods, bringing those parks back to life. There are things that go on in the parks. It's not that nothing happens. But bringing them back to life in terms of with music, art shows, you name it. Whatever people would find exciting and wanting to do in their local park. So we have talked about and would like to hear from you tonight about that kind of direction. It's a different kind of direction. We just have confronted kind of the culmination of the direction of our economic development in Galesburg, as well as just about every other city in the United States. And that is a development that runs, generally speaking, away from minority populations in Galesburg towards the north. The red line, and I don't know that everybody's familiar with a red line, if you've heard that terminology used. The red line in Galesburg has almost from the very beginning run down Main Street. And all of our economic development has surprisingly run towards the north. For the most part, and again, we're not talking 100% here, but for the most part. And if you drive into any community in the country, you'll see that happening. That was the accepted notion on how to do economic development. And now we are just coming off of a campaign to try to discourage Galesburg putting the cream and the cherry on top of the sundae in terms of moving north by opening up a playground for the rich at an expanded Lake Story. Again, is it all bad? No, there would probably be some positives. But we could not make the ledger balance in terms of looking at it. And we are talking about changing that economic development system. It's a systemic issue. A systemic issue of moving away from minority populations to, again, more favorable, more rich, and generally speaking, more white developments. We believe that instead of spending our money, and that was a projected, there's a couple different figures on that, a projected around $26 million project that Galesburg would front. Instead of putting our money in developers that come into town, develop a place, and leave, we are suggesting that we use that money to develop our downtown, our neighborhoods, and our parks. That we feel like our money is better spent on us, to help us, not to help a company that comes into town temporarily and then leaves. That's a big project. That is a big systemic issue that we will have to whittle away at a little bit at a time. Of course, that's not going to happen overnight. There's no expectations that that would happen overnight. But we feel like if we can get a group, and a group like is gathered here tonight, to join in to try to reimagine Galesburg in that way, that we can make a whole lot of progress. There's nothing basically that together, we can't do. We can develop the Galesburg that all of us want. A place where we can be proud of and proud to raise, our children. And that'll sell itself. We don't need fancy plans to try to drive people into town, but they can look and say, holy smokes, look at these parks, look at these neighborhoods, look at this downtown. And that will drive people into Galesburg. For probably well over 50 years, we've tried the other way. And it's not that people did that intentionally, or those people are bad. They were doing what they thought was right, what they were taught. And after 50 years, and when you drive around from town to town that has tried this, that has used this system, you see the same thing. You see the same. That's a nice thing to talk about. But we get discouraged because a lot of times all it is talk. We can never really get past the talk. And our intention is to get past the talk and to start to do. It may be very small things that we have to start with. None of us are rich. We don't have big bucks to throw into anything. But we do have time, and we do have our hands, and we do have knowledge. And if the city won't paint crosswalks that need painting over on the south side, or really anywhere in Galesburg, we'll do it. City, you give us the paint, and we'll send a crew out, and we'll paint these crosswalks. That's the doing that we're talking about. Obviously, that does take some cooperation from the city, and we will be looking to get that. Peter couldn't be here this evening. Peter was driven to run for mayor, kind of because of all the talk and because of all the problems of trying to get the city to help. We didn't anticipate that. But he felt like he had to try to do that. I couldn't say no. You got to stick with and not do that. You got to stick with Many Paths. He'll still be a member of Many Paths. We hope maybe in a different way. But regardless of who becomes the next mayor, we'll work hard to make sure that we can get these things done. I might add, Peter and I did open up an additional 4 paths, just to let you know. One of them had to do with climate change. Climate change, again, from a very local level in terms of planting trees, having your own garden, producing your own produce. Again, no big scheme in terms of what we can do for climate change. Maybe try to get people to use solar. But we can take small steps. Social justice is an issue. Again, social justice comes into the economic developments that we're talking about. By the way, just to catch you up in terms of some of the places where we're getting information, I did bring the book along this evening called Strong Towns. It's a bottom-up revolution to rebuild American prosperity. An excellent book. Quite an organization that this fellow put together. He was an engineer. He was part of the old economic development system. He felt strongly that that was the correct way to go about it. Until one day I think he woke up and said, now wait a minute, this this doesn't quite look right. And he is now proposing much of the same thing that I'm saying. A lot of the information comes from there. Doing some economic development along with those communities. And what we've talked mainly about, and what they are seriously good about, is music. I don't know if you've kept up with Bishop Hill and Galva and Cambridge at John's house, the music going on. It it is unbelievable. And I thought, you know, there's really no reason that Galesburg shouldn't be a part of this. It makes kind of a nice drive up to the Quad Cities. Go from Galesburg up to Cambridge, and if you want to go on up to the Quad Cities then. I know John does already do a lot in the Quad Cities. So we're going to try to get into that a little bit tonight also, on trying to establish that connection. The other two that we opened up were health care, making sure that everybody was getting the health care that they should get. We have 2 hospitals in town. I said 20 years ago, it's ridiculous that these hospitals don't work together. We could have one of the best health care systems, frankly, in the country, much less just in Illinois, if we had cooperation between the 2 hospitals, if they weren't duplicating services. That's been an issue ongoing again for a long, long time. And the last was youth. Trying to make things available for our youth. We had our only youth center burned down that Carver Center operated. We feel like we need to bring our youth more into what's happening, more into what's going on, so they feel a stronger part of the community. We're talking perhaps about trying to get a youth representative on the city council. They would not be a voting part of that council, but would be an advisory to that council. Hey, here's what the young people are saying, here's what they want to do, et cetera, so that their voice is heard. We need a youth center, we need a senior center. Before I left, and they closed the senior center, sold it, which they sold it, and there's a nice business there. We can't complain about that. But there was a very explicit promise to the community. And if we had to, we could go back and dig that out. And that promise was, we will provide you with a senior center. That promise is now about, I don't know when that sale was, but it's at least a dozen years old. And still no senior center. So now we may have an opportunity for a senior center and youth center together, which I think would be great. The seniors may not think it's so great. I don't know. We'd have to find that out. But I think it could be a really neat combination of young people looking to some of the older people for as mentors, as teachers, as examples. So anyway, we have those kind of 2 things coming together. Those are the kind of things we want to talk about. Those are the kind of things that I think will bring Galesburg out of the, I don't know if despair is too deep of a word or too strong of a word, but out of the struggles that we've been having. We started the new year out with 2 murders. You know, we have got to systemically try to change that. We are not going to change that by sending people to prison, you know, by saying, gee, that's just all drugs. We have to systemically work at changing that, which is a process that takes all of us doing that. I was a systemic family therapist. I use systems theory to help families. That notion has now got to be used by our communities instead of these individual, hey, this is just a problem. Hey, there's bad apples on the police force. You can't help that. You know, hey, there's good apples on the police force, but the system does not allow them to change that policing. So we have a lot of things to do. And I think we can get a lot of people to join us. So that's enough from me. That's too much from me, actually. I think what we would, let's try to do is anyone who would like to talk about any issue, doesn't have to be the ones that I've talked about, but any issue that you would like to try to reimagine Galesburg with, we would like to have you. We're actually recording this live on Facebook and YouTube channels, and we're podcasting it. So hopefully some of you, and we have actually that mic set up, and the camera is set up for that mic. If you wouldn't mind coming up, if you feel a little intimidated by that, we don't want that to stop you. We'll try to get a mic to you. So let's open it up, see what we've got. You're going to have to do it out of some. Right.
bunch of cars driving around doing whatever they do. You know, I don't know, you know, I think that I would love to see a beautiful, safe, inviting downtown. I think we have all the pieces. We have more pieces than most. You know, where you could do pop-up kind of plays and outdoor things and make it. Because another thing that's needed is a you're not going to do much.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I mean, you know, and that I'm not saying it was great, but it worked. And so slowing people down for that 5 block area when they hit Chambers before, and then they hit, you know, before Broad. To slow people down for 5 blocks is a possible thing. For a while there, they didn't even get through. And if you really want to be, I won't say nice about it, but if you have a way, then you provide bypasses for people who don't want to be in downtown. They just want to get around and go off, you know, keep going. And you provide a bypass, which is exactly what they did when the underpass was being constructed. So I'm saying that things are, you know, it's not impossible, but if you accept the fact that that's a highway, and it's always going to be a highway, and that takes priority, then I'm not sure, you know, what chance you have.
Well, you know, I don't think. Again, it goes back to what we want.
Exactly.
And I don't think we have to believe that it has to be the way it is. I think it would be naive to think it'd be easy to change it. But I think together, you know, we can get what we believe will help us. With green spaces, with art shows, with music. I mean, there's a lot of components. And we've got a lot of possibilities. And for downtown, I don't want to put any words in Rick's mouth here, but for downtown, we've got to start. You know, we have 2 historic buildings that are being remodeled, I don't know what the proper word is, Rick, but being restored.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I would prefer that you do.
All right. I can stand to the microphone.
That'd be fine.
I'm not worried about it. So, I grew up in Toulon. Anybody know Toulon? You did? Okay, all right. So my first trip to Galesburg, in Galva, and I've spent a lot of time in Bishop Hill. We restored the steeple building, and then we restored the carpenter shop, and that's the kind of work that we've done, like a meditation space, meditation garden with a labyrinth. So these are some things that we're doing, and we're mostly just we've been doing it without talking about it, which is, if anybody knows me, is kind of the way I operate anyway. You know, I just kind of do stuff. And building in other communities, it's been about 10. I spent 12 years working in Independence, Iowa, which is a town that is and has struggled. Their downtown isn't what it could be. But a couple of people have focused really, really hard on what's called the Independence Mill, the Wapsipinicon Mill. And that mill is a focus for those people in town. It gives that town an identity. And built heritage is what built heritage does that. And I really, really believe that if you're going to re-envision things, you have to have a springboard to jump from. And historic buildings, modern buildings, any building that sort of shows people's values and their value in art, their value in craftsmanship, their value in durability, gives things a center. And I've long been an advocate of not focusing on the periphery of communities. There's no future in that. There's clearly no future in that. And it is a failed experiment. And I've been very fortunate in my life to spend a lot of time in Europe, and it's obvious that that's where our future lies, is in revitalization of downtown. So to close, and I really could talk for a very, very long time about this topic. I present on it quite frequently in Europe and in the United States. But to close, I really think that that's what we should focus on, is revitalization of our existing infrastructure. And we are looking for some volunteer support for the projects that we have this year. So part of what I'm speaking about is to sort of elicit some help with that, because we have a bit of a plan, we have some ideas, and we think that those things are good things that will bring people closer to the downtown. And you know, recently I was working with some folks who moved here from Oregon, and they said that when they chose Galesburg, they sort of flipped through some things online, and they wanted to move to a community that had interesting architecture. And I can tell you that even with what's left here, and I get really depressed when I look at this book that somebody did about historic buildings of Galesburg when I see all the ones that are gone. But even with the ones that are gone, what Galesburg has left here that's in incredible condition is far and above 90% of the communities that I work in. And so when I look at it from my perspective, I see this squandering of our local resource. And all we really have to do is pay attention to it, because the nice thing about historic buildings is that they're very human friendly, which means that it's pretty easy to teach people how to tuck point. It's pretty easy to teach people how to do timber framing. It's pretty easy to teach people how to make bricks. These are all things that we've done in a lot of these community workshops. So they're very hands-on, and they're very easy to get people involved in, as opposed to other sort of modern construction methods. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Rick. Might add, we think there's going to be an opportunity when the steeple is raised onto the old City Hall. We're thinking it would be an excellent time to demonstrate what we feel like a nice, good-looking downtown would look like by taking that street and doing, having a couple maybe food trucks there. I haven't mentioned this to Carla yet, but there
South of Main Street, like a block and a half. And all the businesses in this area have voluntarily added to their property tax bill to fund us. So everyone has 1.5% extra on their property tax. You're going to see that on your on your tax bill. And I own a building in the downtown with my husband. Our board consists of property owners in the downtown, and we vote every month. We have committees, and we decide what to what to act on. We try to encourage people to apply. If you own a downtown building, talk to me. Or if you have a business in a downtown building, I can help. Any questions about the Downtown Council?
Yeah, thanks.
It's a pretty great group, so.
Thank you. We get to rolling, you may be sick of seeing us, I don't know. Anybody else? I don't know how our time's doing. Yeah.
All right, good evening, group. I'm Nathan Brandy. Some of you may know me, some may not. I moved here from the suburbs of Chicago to attend KNOX. Started buying land. I've been in the area for about almost a decade now. I've recently moved to Monmouth, but I am working on the Pete for Mayor campaign because he's a great guy and a great professor. Throw that in there. Yeah, a couple things. I think we may have spent a little too much time focusing on downtown because, it's only accessed by a small amount of people, as we see. It's not super lively, but there are serious things we could address that could make downtown better. For instance, a food desert. If you're a Knox College kid, you need groceries, you don't have a car, the buses stop at 5 p.m. You have to go to the quickie to get your milk. at like $5 a gallon. It's ridiculous. And you know, if you're not a KNOX student, you know, you don't live the struggle. You don't live on this side, this far away from Walmart and Aldi's and other stores. On this side of town, Save-A-Lot's the best you got, not unless you go all the way to the edge of town and go to Hy-Vee, which has, you know, fairly better produce and meats. And
They have milk in Walgreens, by the way.
Still far away.
food desert, no produce.
It's not selling.
It's food desert. I mean, like, that's something that needs to be addressed. And there's a lot of old people that live within these things that don't have transportation, that are far away from food and need access to good food instead of chips, snacks, or just a gallon of milk. It's a little, you know, outrageous. As far as music performing spaces, we had one, and we just paid $1 million for 20 parking spots to get rid of it. We're across from Iron Spike. When I came to town, it was a lively place. Bands performed there. Groups of kids walked over, sat in those seats, and listened to people perform. And you get a new business, Iron Spike, all of a sudden you can afford $1 million to pave it all down and then complain about having no. I respect to disagree. I respectfully disagree. Like, we're gonna talk about making one. We just got rid of one when we paid $1 million for 20 to 30 parking spots. Completely irresponsible. And yeah, there's serious things we could be focusing on here, and I just feel like away from downtown needs a little attention, because you know, our downtown, you know, it's what other people see here living in the town, and seeing what people here living in the town see. It's a lot different than, you know, what we're portraying to the media. It's a great town. Come live here. By the way, you got to go all the way over here for your groceries. They don't tell you that. So, yeah.
And we had Aldi's move, which served a lot of kind of the south side and was pretty handy for a lot of people. And of course, they moved to the north side. And we got a marijuana dispensary in its place. So, yeah, a lot of times our economic development doesn't think about everyone. You know, there's not much equality to it. You know, you see elderly people, you know, walking in the ditch because there's nowhere for them to walk. They have to walk. You know, most of us don't think about, you know, having to walk to the grocery store or wherever we're going. But we have a sizable amount of our population that has to depend on some other kind of transportation rather than personal. Today, a car is kind of a luxury, really. I mean, a car is tremendously expensive to operate. And everything is built for a car. And that's just something we've got to start taking into consideration, is another part of the inequality in terms of not everybody can drive out to the new Aldi's. Yeah. Students, you know, in particular. So one of the things that we'd like to see done is to get groups together to walk some of the neighborhoods, you know, which of course had better include some of the neighbors in that area. But how do you experience, you know, this area? What really needs to be done? Are the lights, street lights all off? Again, back to the crosswalks. Do they need some painting? What do the residents in these areas think that they need? You know, it shouldn't come from somebody sitting on the city council. And boy, what they need is this or that or the other thing. You know, but we need to get some groups together to walk the neighborhoods for the people to be able to say, gosh, we've got to have this, we've got to have this. My notion of a way to change systemic policing is to put police back in the neighborhoods. Police have no contact with the people that they're policing. I shouldn't say no contact, little contact. And, you wonder why we don't trust them. But police officers walking the neighborhoods become familiar with the people, become familiar with what's going on, become familiar with the people who live there, and that's a systemic change. Of course, the police department would probably put me in jail for saying that, but that's a systemic change. It's not a systemic change to say we just got some bad apples on the police department. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to keep the bad apples off? Where's the test that's going to show that this is a bad apple and this isn't? You can maybe get some notions, but it's not going to work. Again, it's good. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. I thought maybe I'm not just. So I got.
Reduced price. And so what the Sweetwater Foundation's focus has been to increase the likelihood that people would own homes in this part of Chicago, and that they would have gardens and teach people how to garden, and that they would be able to provide low-cost fresh vegetables for folks. And the way that Sweetwater tried to focus this energy was on building this barn. And what I have seen over and over again in projects that we've done, and the words that people have said to me is, about structures, is that you get the community involved in the structure so that they respect it and they understand it and they maintain it. And what structures do, and I'm speaking because this is like what I do, like it's about buildings. So structures provide a place for people to do that. They provide a place for people to gather. They provide a place for people to grow food. They provide a place for people to talk. And well-built, attractive structures attract people. So I think it's absolutely about a project from my perspective. And whether it's been a project like the Sweetwater Barn or the many barns, other barns that I have done for folks, whether they have been a county park or an agricultural museum, where the focus has been to get youth involved. One place I work in the northwest suburbs, like near St. Charles, is another farm where I've done a couple of barns for a nonprofit. And the focus there is to get suburban kids, any kids, out to this farm and experience animals and see how things are produced and how they grow. And farmers markets, another thing that we've done a lot of. And pavilions of some kind or another where there's music. But in my experience, in the, hundreds of jobs like this I've done, it does tend to be about a building or a process, a tangible can put their hands on and do. And once you do that, then people have ownership. And once they feel like they own something, they do something with it and they maintain it. And I think that from my point of view, everything follows from good buildings. So without good buildings, in my opinion, you have nothing. And it doesn't mean that it has to be really fancy. It doesn't mean that it has to be really well built. It doesn't have to be over the top. I did a project in Suriname in South America one time where we built a building that was simply built completely out of local materials, mostly with West Indian people. And the idea was that it was a well-crafted structure that would attract people to come to this place and experience it. So it doesn't have to be a really fancy timber frame. It doesn't have to be an old barn. It can be anything, really. But I do believe that it's tangible. I think you have to touch it. I think you have to feel it. I think people have to have ownership, feel like they have ownership in things, and that in all cases, what we need to try to convey to people is that buildings in general have nothing to do with the individual ownership at the time. The people who own those buildings at this time are only the stewards of them. In all cases, I believe all buildings belong to all people, whether they're residential or commercial. And they do, because we all experience them every single day. We walk by them every day, we appreciate them every day. So it's not about the ownership of the building, it's about how well it's stewarded. So, yes, that's a short, long yes.
I like to underscore everything you just said. Like, we should be involved in shaping it. And if you bring a group of people in, you show them how to make a building nice, you get all the hands involved in making it nice, people are empowered. And I feel like we can start to do that with a building downtown affecting the marginalized people that we're ignoring by, you know, using a building to fulfill the promises that have been broken by this community, as far as the elderly place, the youth spot, and the library. You know, we got all these promises. They were all left by the wayside, and we have an opportunity to take one building, put all of these things in, bring all of these groups of people together to make it happen. Brilliant. Like, and other than that, you know, it takes time to get stuff like that in motion. I think electing Peter mayor would be a great start. And we're also taking on. I'd also like to volunteer to do that.
Regarding the food desert,
Absolutely.
what is a potential solution to that? I mean, like, do you have like something in mind, something tangible that would
I mean, like
be a
community.
solution?
Yeah, I mean, like Peter tried the whole community garden thing.
Yeah.
Very, very tough to get people actually out and pulling weeds and planting plants.
Yeah.
Very tough, but I don't know. I feel like we have the infrastructure. We have buildings that need, you know, work that we are able to do. If we can take a building and, you know, kind of get like a community grocery store. I don't know. That's a tough thing to solve.
Yeah.
Other than, you know, having another business come in and just fulfill the need.
Because I mean, I agree. The South Side is definitely underutilized for sure. You know, I think a gas station on the South Side would be like a huge thing. It would be a big deal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's very tough.
just my thought.
We might need some other input for food desert strategies, because we tried the garden, didn't work. We could use some.
What is the building over by Brighter Life gonna be? That building that's been cleared out?
It's gonna be an event center.
It is going to be?
Yeah, that's the last time that we heard conversation, unless I'm speaking out of turn and somebody else says differently, but it's privately owned, and it's gonna be an event center.
That'd be great stuff.
It would be.
Nathan, you had mentioned that the bus system.
Nightmare.
I know, and so my question is it possible, because the buses also do not run on Sunday, and there are a lot of people that have Sunday off, but they can't get to places because the buses don't run. But during the week, they do, and at like 6 o'clock. And that means you have to get on the bus at 5, because I used to take the bus from downtown to my house. And if I wanted to get home, I had to be on that bus at 5, because you're done, you can't get on it anymore after that.
That $1 million parking lot into transportation infrastructure would have been magical.
I think if we had our buses run later, and then also on Sunday, when everybody's off and people could be riding the bus.
And KNOX also subsidizes most of the transportation. Like they contribute a hefty amount to transportation. I don't understand why the city, you know, can't, you know, we can do a couple extra dollars to run buses every day, all day.
Well, I'll add that I tend to ride a bike or walk or whatever. I don't own a car. I prefer car-free actually. But there's no, you know, you have to kind of go research it to find out where those buses go. I mean, they don't have maps. There's no
Bus stops. You gotta
at the
leave your
stops.
hour.
Well, yeah, but to me, that's the beauty of it. You can be anywhere, and if the bus goes by there, you can just raise your hand. They will pull over. But they all end up downtown, which is great, on the hour, and so you can always catch a bus there. And for me to figure out where the buses went, I just got on the one that went by my house one day, and I thought, well, I'm going to see where it goes. And you ride for an hour, and you get back to the same spot. But it was, and I love it.
There could be maps at the bus stops. I mean,
But there aren't any bus stops
see the buses go by, but I never, and I know kind of where they go.
Thank God I'm older now. I don't have to worry about it, but it's a nightmare when it was. Yeah.
It's kind of a whole different world, you know, that we really don't even think about. Yeah.
So stupid.
But I was thankful for the buses, and I just wish it ran later, and I wish it ran on Sunday. And I think we could,
That's something we could actually do, you know? We
that
could.
would be. Wish it ran on Sunday. That would help, because that would benefit all of the people that ride the bus. Which there are a lot of people, it was always cool, always had people on.
Thank you, Nathan. I will say concerning buildings, we have talked about, mainly Peter and I, along with the neighborhood concept of having a commons building in each of the neighborhoods for meetings, discussions, people who are going to play checkers, you know, all sorts of things. And that kind of came from Bishop Hill and the Commons building there. They have music in there, and they have artists and people displaying things, very useful buildings. That certainly would be an interesting idea. In fact, I've had Rick out already at one to look at the building at Bateman Park, the old fire station. The old fire station is a historically significant building. The city just moved out of it. They were using it, and I'm guessing it's going to be on a demolition list fairly soon. I wouldn't take my word for that exactly, but I don't think the city is going to want it to sit there and not be used for very long. It would be a great commons area for the Bateman Park, you know, neighborhood, which is what I would call it. But it's those kind of things that go along with Rick's kind of buildings, you know, that people can have some ownership of. Well, I don't know. We got to be close to time, probably. $6:34. Okay. Johnny, would you want to say anything?
I guess. I mean, I'm here.
You came all this way. You got to say something.
Yeah. Well, first off, I need to raise this microphone. Sorry. Here we go. All right. First, I just want to thank everyone for being here, and especially Jason. For those of you who don't know Jason Bates, he is kind of my. He refers to himself. How do you refer to yourself? Is the what the Igor? Yeah, the Igor to my Dr. Frankenstein. He's one of those guys he's up for everything, and he's been there for all sorts of stuff that we've tried to do, and some of it's went over, some of it hasn't. And I appreciate him coming out. And his birthday was yesterday, so I hope I hope he had a good birthday. I know he doesn't like being put on the spot, so his face is going to turn red here in just a second. But no, I appreciate everyone coming out, and I see some friends here, so that's great. And yeah, I've been trying to think of things to say, and probably at the root of all of this, about 8 years ago, right around 7, 8 years ago, I decided that every day I was going to spend a little bit of time doing something for my community, and it could be anything, but I just made that decision that I was going to spend at least 1 hour a day. It's actually turned out to be much more than that, but I made that decision that every day I was going to spend at least in 1 hour of my day doing something for my community, and it changed my life. I mean, it literally has changed my life, and the friends that I see here, I wouldn't be friends with if I didn't do that. And so going back to kind of what Sarah was saying about taking action, that's really the most important part of all this is, you know, having a vision and then taking action towards that vision. And, you know, in my opinion, that's really it. You know, if you don't have something that you're working towards, it's really hard to work towards anything. And so I think, you know, having that vision and then getting people to sign on to that vision and say, okay, yeah, that sounds like something that would benefit me or benefit my community or benefit my friends and family, or, you know, whatever it might be. That's really what it takes to start getting some things done. And, you know, we've seen it. I'm glad you're here, because we got the stage in Galva going. That's how that happened. You know, we started a concert series there in the park, and then, you know, after a couple years of doing that, finally got a campaign going to get the funds to be able to hire someone to come in and do it. And, you know, we did that. We got a stage going up in Cambridge right now. But it could happen anywhere, and it just takes a little bit of time and a vision, and everyone has time, and that's the thing is you know, everyone has time. And so if I had anything to pass along to anyone is, you know, use your time for things that are going to matter, that are going to outlive you, and that's really, you know, that's where the magic happens. You know, you don't have to have money, you don't have to have a lot of skills necessarily, but if you're putting in time towards things that benefit a lot of people, that will come back to you in spades. And you know, it's one thing to talk, and it's great to share ideas and everything, but I'm like Sarah, I like to do things. That's really it. I mean, that's what I enjoy, and so yeah. But Bruce mentioned earlier, one of the things that Jason and myself and Bob over here and Annette and whoever else I can rope into this, you know, one of the things that we've been doing is focusing on bringing people together through live music. You know, the way I see it, you know, if you can get a bunch of people together and they're sharing an experience, that's one thing that those people all have in common. You know, there's a lot of things that can divide us, but that one thing can be the one thing that opens up the door to all sorts of other things. And really that's why I do live music is to break down those barriers between people, because I've seen the power of it. I've seen it change my life, and I've seen it change the lives of many others, and that's why I focus on doing live music. And so, yeah, I would be very excited to bring live music to Galesburg as much as I can, and really the whole area. I mean, it really, it's one of those things that we're all in this together. I mean, and there can't be enough of that sort of thing, and in my opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My wife and I had just gotten back into town, and Nathan said, let's go to Galva. They've got music in Galva. So we went to Galva, and I think there was a band from Ireland playing, Conla, and I think it was Chicago Farmer was there. And, you know, it was really good. I said, gee, this is kind of weird. So we just happened to pick up that John was going to have a group at his house in Cambridge. So I said, well, let's go to Cambridge and see what's going on here. You know, and I'm thinking it can't be much. But we go to Cambridge, and we hear Hermitage Green. Probably, I don't know, one of the one of the best bands in Ireland, probably. You know, and I'm sitting there in the middle of a cornfield practically at John's house, listening to as good a band as I've ever really heard. Maybe just short of the Beatles, but not by much.